At UFC 234, Robert Whitaker and Kelvin Gastelum were supposed to headline the main event. Unfortunately, Robert Whitaker pulled out with what was a hernia. Whitaker or Kelvin Gastelum should have been pulled out with a staph infection, but that's a separate issue. But while that hurt the event, we still got to see Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. Now, because this happened last second, they weren't able to make it a 5-round fight. Israel talked about how he would have had to have been paid a little bit extra to go 5 rounds, and I don't think Anderson was prepared for 5 rounds anyway, and that's okay. It was still a really good fight. So I'll just play through some of the highlights on it and then give my thoughts on how the fight went and where I think they should go from here. So this is from ESPN Plus. This is the ESPN Plus post-fight show. They're just showing Bruce Buffer. Nice shot there by Israel.
I don't know where that narrative came from. I think over time he did start to respect Anderson a little bit. I think Anderson threw a couple of tricks at him, but Adesanya made adjustments.
Vintage Anderson there, just taking punches and staring back at his opponent.
Something that Anderson usually does to throw his opponents off, and every time the Spider went to bait him in, that's where you could see the experience of Adesanya go, no.
Just missed the flying knee.
For that trap, and I will not be one of them. I thought he showed tremendous patience. Listen, final analysis, John. He told Brett Okamoto to check his email yesterday. Well, I checked my email, and it says Adesanya is the new #1 contender. Well,
yeah, and this was a great fight. I saw some people online that didn't really like it so much. I think if you were expecting someone to get knocked out quickly, then maybe this wasn't your cup of tea. But there was a lot of high-level striking there. Really interesting to see all the feints that were being used by Adesanya. Interesting to see how Silva would sort of be able to start to read Adesanya, and then Adesanya would change it up on him. What we are used to seeing from Anderson Silva and what he's still capable of doing is just doing a really good job of reading his opponent, trying to figure out what sort of tells they have before they throw a certain strike and then countering them. Adesanya did a really good job of feigning, and then trying to kind of play the same game against Anderson, where if he feints and then sees Anderson trying to counter, then he would know what to counter in terms of what Anderson's trying to counter. So if I were to give you an example, I should say that Anderson's waiting on Adesanya to throw a jab, so Silva can like step to the side and throw a hook over the top. Adesanya might feint in a jab to see the hook and then know, okay, well, if I feint a jab, I'm going to have a hook coming, and then I can counter that hook by doing, say, throwing a leg kick or something. We saw a lot of that from Israel Adesanya, where it was just kind of a lot of multi-step chess between the two. So there's a lot of exciting moments regardless of all the strategy involved. As you can see there, Adesanya was able to land a lot of really hard punches in there. Silva had his moments too where he landed some shots. Had that flying knee attempt that just barely missed. We got to see some theatrics in both of them where they were both kind of, where Silva was doing that little fly swatter thing where he kind of moves his hand around to try to get people confused and freeze them up. Adesanya was doing a little bit of dancing too. Did the thing at the end of the first round where he was kind of waving him on like Neo in the Matrix, and then after that he did that, I don't know what exactly it's from, it kind of reminded me like a Michael Jackson move where he kind of like grabbed his crotch and then like slid over into his corner. So we got to see a lot of really cool stuff out of the two, and it was pretty nice to actually get to see the fight. And I was a little bit concerned heading in that this fight was going to be a fight of two guys who are going to counter each other the whole time, and there won't be a whole lot of action. There was definitely the countering aspect, but these guys definitely threw more than enough to make this a good fight. It was deservedly fight of the night. From here, Anderson Silva, at this point, obviously, I don't think he's ever going to win a title again. It would have been interesting if he won this fight, because if you look at both Kelvin Gastelum and Robert Whitaker, those matchups are kind of interesting even still at this point for Anderson Silva. I think you probably have to give the edge to Kelvin or Whitaker, but if both of them decide to keep the fight on the feet, Anderson's alive in those fights. Like, he's got a chance. Obviously, he hung tough with Israel Adesanya. Obviously, it doesn't look great there, but he had his moments, and it would have been pretty shocking if he could have gotten the upset here and then got another upset to win the title. But at this point, he's pretty far out from a title shot. He's talking about fighting Nick Diaz, and I'm okay with that. I think at this point, it's just exciting matchups that you want for him. You just want super fights. Nick Diaz is a good fight for that. Connor was talking about maybe fighting Nate on the same card. I don't see how that's going to happen. It's pretty short notice to be doing that by May. And then even if they do get it set up by then, for them to have a card that big in Brazil doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Seems like a lot of money's going to have to be spent on security. I don't know. To me, that feels like a fight that needs to be happening in Vegas or somewhere in a bigger market that you can really take advantage of a hefty marketing budget. And I feel like North America's got to be the spot for that. So probably not going to get that card. Obviously, Connor's been talking about fighting someone on pretty much every UFC card that happens. He's talking about fighting Cowboy. He was talking about fighting in Brazil after the Fortaleza event. He mentioned fighting Anderson Silva after this one, and then mentioning fighting Nate on the undercard for Anderson Silva. So I don't think we're going to get that out of Conor, but even still, pretty exciting. As far as Israel goes, it makes sense for him to be the next in line for the title shot. The fact that Kelvin and Whitaker didn't fight and get one of those guys knocked out of contention, whether it was Whitaker losing the belt or Kelvin losing the contendership after losing to Whitaker, it kind of has an extra contender right now that there doesn't need to be. But I think for Israel, he's fought 5 times in the last year. If he has to wait a little while, that's okay. The timeline for Whitaker, I think, could be a little bit longer, and I think based on the timeline, it might be worth just having Kelvin and Adesanya fight in the meantime. Because for Whitaker, they're talking about 4 to 6 weeks for the hernia. Now, it's worth noting that let's just say it is 4 to 6 weeks, and that might be a generous estimate. That's 4 to 6 weeks before he's able to actually like get back in training. And once he's able to get back in training, well, then you still have to have a fight camp. So if we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks plus, say, an 8 to 10 week fight camp, you're pushing yourself probably past June, and his last fight was in June for the title against Yoel Romero. So I think at this point, you probably have to say, hey, look, we don't know how long it's going to be for Whitaker to be back. It's probably going to be a while because he has to get back into shape and then actually like prepare for a fight. It might just be worth letting Kelvin get rid of his staph infection, giving Adesanya some time to heal up after this fight, although it doesn't look like he took a whole ton of damage, and then just having those two go at it for the number one contender fight. Or again, since it's been a year since the last middleweight title fight, just make it an interim middleweight title fight, and then give Whitaker a little bit of extra time. So hopefully we get to see Adesanya sometime soon. Hopefully he doesn't have to wait too long, and they don't make it so that they do Kelvin versus Whitaker and have them fight, say, 4 or 5 months down the line, and then have Adesanya fight after that, which you'd have to figure you'd give the winner of that at least another 3 months, which means you wouldn't see Adesanya for at least 7 to 8 months. So hopefully they find a way to make it a little bit faster so we don't have to wait all that long to see everyone fight again. Great fight. Hopefully Anderson Silva gets a fight against Nick Diaz or someone else who's going to stand with him and make it an exciting fight. It's nice to see that even though he's a little bit slower than he was in the past, he's a little chinnier than he was in the past. A lot of his skills still remain, and he's still a guy who you love to watch fight.